Apple Cash and Apple Pay went down for about 9 hours straight, right when people were trying to send and receive real money. It became one of Apple's longest outages in recent months, and days later, the company still hasn't explained what actually caused it. Social media filled up fast with people asking the same question at the same time. Is Apple Pay down, or is it just me? Here are 5 things to know about the outage, what actually broke, and why it matters more than a typical app glitch. Number 1. The timeline. The trouble started around 4:30 in the afternoon Eastern Time on July 31st, and complaints spiked hard within the next half hour. By 6 p.m., Downdetector had logged close to 1,400 reports for Apple Pay alone, the peak of the entire incident. Reports stayed above 1,000 for hours afterward, and didn't drop below 500 until after 10:30 that night. That means for roughly 6 straight hours, over 1,000 people every hour were actively reporting a problem, not just a brief blip that resolved itself quickly. Apple finally restored service at around 1 in the morning on August 1st, closing out a disruption that lasted roughly 9 hours from start to finish. 9 hours might not sound dramatic for a website, but for a live payment system, that's most of a full workday where a core feature simply didn't function. Number 2. What actually broke? This wasn't a card payment problem at checkout. It was specifically Apple Cash, the peer-to-peer feature people use to send money to friends and family. Users trying to send or receive Apple Cash got a blunt error message instead, one that simply read, "Unable to connect to wallet services." Transfers between Apple Cash balances and linked bank accounts failed too, some getting stuck in a pending state instead of failing outright or completing. For a lot of people, that's worse than a clean failure, because there was no way to tell if the money had actually moved or simply vanished into a queue somewhere. Some in-store and online purchases using an Apple Cash balance also failed during the window, though regular card-based Apple Pay purchases were largely unaffected. That distinction matters, because it tells you the outage was narrower than the panic online suggested, but for the people actually affected, narrower didn't make it any less frustrating. Number 3. Apple's response and its silence. The company updated its own system status page to acknowledge the problem, while after outside trackers had already flagged it. Apple restored full service after roughly 9 hours, and its status page now shows everything back to fully operational. But unlike some past outages where companies publish a root cause afterward, Apple has not said what actually triggered this one. No mention of a server issue, a bad update, or a third-party provider, just a quiet return to normal and a status page that says everything is fine now. This isn't even the first time Apple Cash specifically has had a standalone outage separate from the rest of Apple Pay, which is exactly why some users want more than just silence this time. Compare that to some other major outages, where companies eventually publish a short technical write-up explaining exactly what broke and what they changed to prevent it happening again. Apple's silence here isn't unusual for the company specifically. It rarely explains outages in detail, but that pattern is exactly what leaves room for speculation to fill the gap. Number 4. Why a 9-hour outage on this specific feature matters more than it might seem. Apple Cash is actually the smallest of the major peer-to-peer payment apps in the US. Cash App and Zelle each have roughly double the user base Apple Cash does, with Venmo also ahead of it among younger users splitting bills and rent. Interestingly, surveys show Gen Z actually leans toward Apple Pay more than older millennials do, who still default to Venmo out of habit. But being smaller doesn't make the money involved any less real. People use these apps to pay rent, split groceries, and cover bills with actual deadlines attached. A 9-hour window where nobody can tell if a payment went through is a real problem when the person on the other end is waiting on that money to pay something due that same day. Multiply that one late rent split by the thousands of people affected, and a 9-hour glitch turns into a genuinely large number of real, individually stressful nights. Number 5. This keeps happening across the industry, not just to Apple. Major payment and tech platforms have had similar multi-hour outages more than once in the past year alone. Every one of these incidents raises the same question: whether critical financial infrastructure should ever be allowed to go dark for the better part of a workday. Banks are heavily regulated specifically around uptime and disclosure, but the apps that now move a huge amount of everyday money often face far fewer requirements to explain themselves. Without a public explanation, Users are left simply trusting that it won't happen again, with no way to actually verify that anything changed behind the scenes. For a service that markets itself on being simple and reliable specifically because it comes from Apple, a silent 9-hour gap cuts against that exact selling point. None of this means Apple Cash is unsafe to use day to day. Outages like this are still rare, but rare doesn't mean the questions about transparency go away on their own. 9 hours, thousands of reports, and still no real explanation. That's where this one stands for now, unless Apple decides to say more later. If you found this breakdown useful, subscribe for more tech stories like this one, and let us know if you were affected by this outage.